Hey everyone, Nate here. I hope you're all doing well and enjoying the intensity of these playing games as much as I am. I'm going to talk a little basketball today. Feel free to stick around. Boston's first round opponent is locked in after the Hawks defeated Miami 116-105. I had no problem facing the Heat, and that loss showed why. But this is the matchup I was hoping for, and I think most fans were too. I don't want to waste anyone's time. We have plenty to talk about. Let's dive in, shall we? From a statistical perspective, the Hawks are already fighting an uphill battle. Atlanta finished the season with the third highest points per game at 118.4 and the seventh best offensive rating at 115.5. That's a genuinely good offense. However, the other side of the ball is the polar opposite. The Hawks gave up 118.1 points per game, the fourth most in the league. They're just barely a positive net rating team on the back of that offense with a .1 net rating, which is 19th in the NBA. It's also a whole 6.5 points worse than the Celtics, who are second in both offensive rating and defensive rating. A couple things you should know about Atlanta's high-scoring offense is that they live in the mid-range and run a ton of pick and roll. To the first point, the Hawks have the second highest frequency of shots taken in the mid-range and convert at the second best rate in the league, knocking down 46.7%. This is a stark contrast from Boston, which has the lowest frequency of mid-range shots in the NBA and knocks down just under 43% of them. The Hawks lead the league in pick and rolls per game. Trey runs the second most with 12.7 per game, and DeJounte Murray is 19th with 7.9. Those two account for 20.6 of their 24.5 pick and rolls per game. Pick and roll play and mid-range looks are connected for these two. DeJounte seeks out a switch or a slight advantage and wants to get to his pull-up, while Trey collaborates with the bigs to find a blend of floaters and lobs that's pretty difficult to defend. There are a few ways that Boston can approach this. With Trey, getting to the middle of the floor for that floater is generally his priority. Boston has the size necessary to clog that up for him. I expect them to mix things up with a combination of switching and drop coverage. I'd be happy to see some traps thrown in there as well. If they are in a drop, his defender needs to work to stay in the play and make his presence felt from behind. This is something that Derek White is especially great at. It's essential that someone is also in position to tag the roller. They can't allow the Hawks clean lob angles. Force him to make the kick out to the corner if necessary, close out strong, and bank on Atlanta's weak three-point shooting. They're bottom 10 in both frequency and efficiency from deep. When they do decide to switch, there are options there. Boston can offer up one of the bigs and feel comfortable that both Horford and Rob can win that 1v1 battle occasionally. Trey will get his own on that island, but being selective about when their bigs drop or switch give them the ability to dictate things a bit more. Additionally, there's room for pre-switching and creative matchups, which are two things Mazzulla has a good feel for. That could mean Tatum on Trey for a few possessions, which is something we've seen in the past. Because when the screen comes, Tatum is either in the rear view trailing Trey with his length, or he's switching, and the Celtics feel very comfortable allowing Tatum to battle for position with Capella and Collins. Pre-switching is an excellent way to keep Rob or Al out of the action and in position to protect the rim. They got very good at this last season, and it's really tough to counter efficiently. Let's say the Hawks want to get Rob switched onto Trey, right? They'll call up whoever Rob is defending to set a screen, but as this is unfolding, Rob gets kicked out of the action by his teammate in order to stay low. From the Hawks' point of view, do you really want to waste even more time trying to get Rob involved again? Probably not when each possession is so valuable. As I said before, DeJounte prefers a more 1v1 style of ball. He finds comfort shooting off the dribble in the mid-range. This is where things get interesting though. Boston's defense is built around preferring that you take these looks. They allow the second highest frequency of mid-range attempts in the league, and are middle of the pack in terms of opponent field goal percentage. The idea here is that you might be good at it, great even, but can you do enough there to match their three-point shooting? I lean towards no, considering the Hawks' own three-point shot isn't very effective. The key in my eyes is that Boston has to be a little bit more active and physical, because last season they had the second best mid-range defense in the league with a nearly identical frequency. On the other side of the ball, the Hawks defense is not good, to put it lightly. By the numbers, they give up the 4th highest percentage of shots at the rim. Personnel-wise, there are a few clear weaknesses. Before I dip into that, I will note that Atlanta defends the 3 fairly well. They allow the 7th lowest frequency of 3-point attempts, holding teams to 35.6% from 3, the 10th best figure in the league. That's something to keep in mind, and we'll see how it plays out, but their inability to dissuade teams from attacking the rim likely has something to do with it too. Atlanta has some guys. They have depth, as far as playable NBA talent. DeAndre Hunter, Bogdanovich, and Bey can all put the ball in the hoop, and each has a little bit of creation ability. They'll also attack off of Trey and DeJounte's playmaking. John Collins, Capella, and Okongwu are a solid big rotation. They each offer a different skill set. Capella's got the rebounding, Collins the athleticism, and Okongwu has a versatile skill set. The problem is that none of them can shoot it. Collins is the only one who will, but he's sub 30% from 3, and they're going to be forced to defend in space against quicker and skillful players. From a Celtics perspective, that's a massive advantage. If your bigs can't space the floor and aren't switchable defenders, how can you start 2 of them against a 5-out offense? If Boston stays with their typical starters, the Hawks need to think long and hard about downsizing their own starting unit if they want to avoid a sweep. In a March matchup with both teams' starters healthy, the Hawks went with Trey on White, DeJounte on Jalen, Hunter on Tatum, Collins on Smart, and Capella on Horford. There are so many problems there, but Capella being pulled away from the hoop hurts an already poor rim defense team. Additionally, the Celtics are going to seek out Trey often, and truthfully, there's nowhere to hide, even with a lineup change. D. White is his best option, and it makes sense why they'd go there, because Marcus would walk him right down into the paint, and he won't be on the Jays for obvious reasons. Derek isn't in that same mold, but he has the size and scoring ability to make the Hawks sweat. Even if he's not attacking Trey directly, he'll bring him into the action as a screener. What happens then when Brogdon checks in? He plays a physical, straight-line drive, you can't knock me off my path style. Trey can't exactly match that, but there's no choice when Malcolm and Rob check in. I don't know. I'd hate to have to game plan against that personally if I were Quinn Snyder. If Atlanta were to make a starting lineup change to get more switchable and better suited to defend a 5-out offense, like inserting Okongwu for example, it still doesn't give Trey a place to hide. Adjustments are always necessary in a playoff setting, but if you can force that change first, then you've won an important part of the battle. After that, it's about how you deal with those adjustments yourself. The hope for Atlanta will be that by maintaining their size and rebounding in the front court, they'll be able to make the Celtics flinch. I get that. Capella did pull down 21 boards against the Heat, but Boston does a great job on the glass. They have the best defensive rebounding percentage in the NBA. Tatum and Brown are committed to cleaning up misses as well, with each pulling down a career high in rebounds per game. There will be moments where the Hawks create second chance opportunities, but if Boston stays disciplined, their team rebounding ability should limit those. The truth is, Mazzulla and the Celtics believe in their versatility enough that this won't bother them. They have no problem switching guards and wings onto Capella and boxing him out. But as we move on to things to watch for, the rebounding battle is a clear area for Atlanta to shake things up. A few factors I'm keeping an eye on. Who will Atlanta call on, and who can answer that call? The bench quartet of Bogdanovich, Bey, Okongwu, and Jalen Johnson is honestly quite good when the young guys are playing like they did against the Heat. Their success will be a determining factor in what this series looks like in my opinion. Are they ready for the bright lights against a playoff-tested opponent? I'm not so sure. Out of that group, Okongwu is the guy I'm really looking at and thinking, yeah, they have something here. It might not be an answer to their problems, but let's call it a suggestion. He strikes me as more capable of defending against Boston than either of his front court partners in Collins and Capella. And if desperation sets in, he's a good option as a starter. If Bogdanovich can keep up with Brogdon's production, that'll be really helpful as well. You know he can get 15 plus any night. Hunter is the primary defender for Tatum, but maybe throw 6'9" Jalen Johnson at him for a bit and see how that looks. Can he do enough there without compromising the spacing is the real question. Saddiq Bey I don't quite know how to place. He's not much of a defender, but since arriving in Atlanta, he's knocked down 40% of his threes. That type of spacing and shot making could be really helpful to open up the floor on Trey and Murray drives. But if he can't hang defensively, it's just another hole to plug that the Hawks can't afford. How does Mazzulla approach his first playoff run? We saw the playoff rotation against Milwaukee with starters plus Rob, Brogdon, and Grant as the only 8 to touch the floor before the game was out of reach. I'm interested to see what type of tactical decisions he makes, and if he'll expand the rotation to include Hauser, because he absolutely deserves the minutes and proved this year that he can hold up defensively. Sam also happens to be shooting 68% from 3 on 25 attempts against the Hawks this year. He scored 12 or more points in all 3 games. I don't expect major minutes from either of them, but it wouldn't surprise me if Blake or Muscala are called upon for brief windows of the game. Pritchard ended the season on a high note, and Cornette racked up a ton of regular season minutes. I wouldn't count on those two getting playing time though. Maybe Joe was saving the surprises for the playoff though. Who knows? It's a prime opportunity for him to win over some skeptics. The final thing I'd like to touch on is how great these duos can be. I'm sure by now I've made it known the dilemma that the Hawks have with Trae Young, but he's still a very good offensive talent. Yes, he draws some frustrating fouls, but you can't just walk into 26 and 10. He knows how to run an offense and is very capable of controlling the flow of a game. That's why I put so much emphasis on how he's defended and forcing him to defend. If you bring the physicality and make him work on both ends, it's really hard to sustain elite impact in a 7-game series as a 6'1" guard. Get into him and make him feel you early, similar to the level of physicality they gave KD in the Nets series. With DeJounte, he's going to be tasked with trying to slow down Jalen, while also being a true focal point in the playoffs for the first time in his career. He's played in 16 playoff games with the Spurs and only had 10 or more field goal attempts twice. He'll find a rhythm at times, but as a below average 3-point shooter, being ultra aggressive is his best chance to poke holes in a defense that has enough options to throw at him. If he can provide the two-way excellence they'll need from him, it gives the Hawks a chance to hang around in these games. Personally, I'll have to see it before I believe it though. For the Jays, despite being just 25 and 26 years old, they're each at the point in their respective careers where they've had enough experience in high-pressure moments that this series should be a breeze. We've heard all year that after the finals loss, this team knows what it takes now. That's what I want to see from Brown and Tatum. Play with composure, bring the intensity, and don't let this series go any longer than it should. Adversity is good, but don't manufacture it in place of rest. Boston has an overwhelming amount of pressure points they can hit, and the advantage in top-end talent as well. That, combined with their collective playoff experience, is enough for me to predict a sweep. Things happen, players have big games, but anything more than 5 games isn't acceptable to me when the path in front of them includes several contenders. For now though, there should be no looking ahead. Take this Hawks team seriously and send them home in 4. That's all from me. If you made it this far, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, consider dropping a like. If you aren't subscribed yet, what's wrong with you? I hope you all have a great day though and are ready to enjoy some playoff basketball. Take care. Go Celtics.